Pakistan is still to give a full account of what has happened as militants of the Baloch Liberation Army took control of a moving train and took, according to them, at least 100 Pakistani soldiers and security personnel hostage. In the meantime, a viral video has surfaced, a video that shows the exact moment when the BLA militants blew up the rail tracks on which the Jaffar Express was traveling from Peshawar to Quetta. And these militants, backed up by suicide bombers who are reported to have been on the train alongside the passengers, took control of it in an unprecedented security challenge for the Pakistani state and for the Pakistani military. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo story. On the program today, a viral video has now surfaced that shows the first moments when Baloch militants took control of a moving train, the Jaffar Express, creating an unprecedented situation, a security challenge like none before for the Pakistani army and the Pakistani state. These images have since gone viral and they show how Baloch militants took control of this train. The Suicide Squad division of the Baloch Liberation Army, or the BLA as it calls itself, has taken responsibility for this attack. At the moment that we speak, the Pakistani military is claiming that more than 190 hostages have been rescued. The BLA is claiming that at least 100 Pakistani security personnel are still endangered and in its control. Differing versions of what exactly is happening on the ground continue, even as the Pakistan military refuses to give a detailed account of exactly what has happened. And the Pakistani media seems to have been under pressure to impose a veritable blackout of exactly what has gone down in Balochistan. But prominent Pakistani politicians, Akhtar Mengel among them, today issued a statement saying not even 1 inch of Balochistan is now within the control of the Pakistani government. There's a lot to decode as we look at what's happening. Is the balkanization of Pakistan inevitable? Will Pakistan break again? I want to welcome our newsmaker to the program today. Tilak Devasher is with us. Mr. Devasher is the author of, most recently, a book that actually looks at the Pakistan's Balochistan Conundrum. That's what the book is called. He's also a member of the NSAB, the National Security Advisory Board. Namaskar and welcome to the program. These are unprecedented images even for Pakistan. And the media blackout in Pakistan means that most of us have been relying on what's surfacing on social media, what Baloch politicians and activists are sharing, and what indeed the BLA is putting out itself. Your first thoughts that you look at the Majid division, the Suicide Squad wing, as it were, of the BLA, taking control of this moving train, viral images of which are now accessible, not just to Pakistan, but for the world to see. Mr. Devasher.
First of all, Balkha, thank you so much for having me on your show. First impression was disbelief. Never heard, in my experience, of a train being hijacked. The closest I think we ever came to a train being hijacked was in Sholay, when the dacoits tried to hijack a train and Biru and Jay fought it off. Now, hijacking a train is of a very different order than, let's say, an aircraft or a bus or a car or something. How do you stop, first of all, a moving train? It requires a lot of planning, it requires a lot of firepower, explosives, rockets, and coordination, because they must have planned out this operation in advance, that this is the place where the train can be stopped. And they were told, they had good intelligence that so many army people are traveling on this train. So I think this has taken the level of the Baloch struggle for independence to a whole new level. Henceforth, when we talk, it'll be pre-Jaffar Express and post-Jaffar Express. The level of insurgency now has been taken up several notches. It's gotten into a higher gear. And that's why my first impression was that this is absolutely unbelievable what they have managed to achieve. And one of the reasons I think they were able to do this was, if you would recall, about 10 days or 2 weeks ago, the various Baloch groups had got together and decided that they will now, henceforth, carry out operations jointly in a coordinated manner, rather than doing it individually in small penny packets. And to give the name of the organization as the Balochistan National Army. So I suspect, I have no evidence, this is my hypothesis, that this is the first instance where coordinated action has been taken by the Baloch group to pull off something like this. For one thing, we don't know how many Baloch fighters are actually involved in an operation like this. Because if you want to take 450 people hostage, you can imagine the amount of manpower that will be required to make sure that they don't escape. So we need more details. There's a lot of fog of misinformation, and we don't know the full details yet. But certainly an absolutely mind-boggling incident.
What we do know is that there were a number of Pakistani soldiers and security personnel on board this train. We know this independently from Pakistani journalists. The Pakistani military has not said anything about this. In fact, some journalists have even shared that they were soldiers or security personnel of the 33rd Infantry Division of the Pakistani Army. There are very differing narratives coming. Pakistan Army is almost saying nothing. The BLA, in its press statements, is claiming that it still has hostages under its control. It is conceding that suicide bombers were on the train, but there were obviously others around the train, because first the tracks were blown up. So as you said, we don't actually right now know how many militants were involved in this. We don't know how many groups were involved in this. But in terms of what this says about Pakistan's fading control over Balochistan, what does it say to you?
No, I think that's a very important point, because, if you take the two provinces, KPK and Balochistan, the immediate, the number of casualties and the attacks by the TTP have been of a higher intensity. So I think the Pakistan Army was paying a lot of attention to what was happening in KPK and less in Balochistan. I'm not saying they took their eyes off Balochistan, but certainly less attention to Balochistan as compared to KPK. And obviously there have been serious lapses. I mean, for example, can you imagine 214, if that is the number of soldiers, even if they're going on leave, will so many go on leave at the same time from a military station, even if it is during Ramzan, even if it is to celebrate or observe Eid, but all of them going together? So there obviously has been serious lapses of the Pakistan Army, the Southern Command in Balochistan, that they took liberties or took, casual sort of an attitude in which the Baloch had the intelligence to take advantage of, and they took it.
Yeah. So I want to, as we look at these are older images released by the Baloch Liberation Army, as it calls itself, a video in which they actually interestingly warned both Pakistan and China. And I want to talk a little bit more about, Chinese projects that have come under attack from Baluchi insurgents. But before that, there have been people in the mainstream of Pakistan's politics, members of parliament, members of Pakistan's National Assembly, who have been warning that Balochistan is slipping out of control, that Pakistan is in danger of losing its hold over Balochistan. Interestingly, one of them was Fazlur Rahman, on the right of the political spectrum, and I'm just going to play out the statement for our audience and come right back to you, who warned that Pakistan was in danger of losing Balochistan. Take a look.
जनाब स्पीकर, मेरे इलाके में ऐसे ऐसे एरियाज हैं जिसको फौज ने भी खाली कर दिया है, पुलिस तो खाली कर चुकी थी। बता दूं आपको, ऐवान को बताना चाहता हूं, वो इलाके कि जो पुलिस तो खाली कर चुकी थी लेकिन फौज भी खाली कर चुकी है, और जहां पर जंग हो और पुलिस भी ना हो और फौज भी ना हो, तो वो एरिया किसके कब्जे में होगा और वहां किसका रेट होगा? और दिल पे हाथ रखकर मुझे कहना पड़ता है, इंतहाई दर्द दिल के साथ कहना पड़ता है कि इस वक्त बलूचिस्तान के 5 से 7 अजला इस पोजीशन में हैं कि अगर वो आजादी का ऐलान कर दें तो अगले दिन अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा में उनकी दरखास्त को कबूल। कहां खड़े हैं हम लोग? मेरी गुफ्तगू को जज्बाती गुफ्तगू न समझा जाए। मैं जज्बाती बातें नहीं क्या करता, लेकिन हकायक तक पहुंचने के लिए पार्लियामेंट को भी पहुंचना होगा और हुकूमत को भी पहुंचना होगा। इस वक्त जब हमारा ऐवान यहां बैठा है, सूबा खैबर पख्तूनख्वा के जनूबी अजला, इस वक्त वहां कोई हुकूमत नहीं है, वहां कोई पुलिस नहीं है। पुलिस चौकियां अंदर से कुंडे लगाकर बंद कर दी गई हैं।
And Tilak Devasher, before you respond, Akhtar Mengel, who resigned from the Pakistan National Assembly in protest against what he called the crackdown on his people, today went one step further in a comment on X saying not 1 inch of Balochistan is in the control of the Pakistan government anymore. This is a big statement. Now, you're a foremost expert on Balochistan. In fact, if you can pick up a copy of your book, the Balochistan Conundrum, I know it's with you. I urge everybody who wants to understand, there it is, what's happening in Pakistan with the Balochistan challenge, to read Tilak Devasher's book. Tilak Devasher, Akhtar Mengel, Fazlur Rahman, these are not militants, these are not terrorists, these are elected members, elected politicians in the mainstream of Pakistan who are saying that the Pakistani state no longer has control over Balochistan. Do you think that there is a danger now, given what's happened with this train hijack, of the balkanization of Pakistan? Will Pakistan break?
Yeah. So, Akhtar Mengel last year, if you recall, he wanted to address the issue of the situation in Balochistan. For 2 days, he was not allowed to speak in the National Assembly. On the third day, when he got up to speak, somebody said that the quorum is not complete, so the assembly was adjourned. He had to come out, and in disgust, he resigned from the National Assembly. And while resigning, he said very much the same thing, that the situation is not under our control, it is being controlled by the boys in the mountains. He said the same thing in his tweet today. Fazlur Rahman, Fazlur Rahman is one of the most astute and mature politicians in Pakistan. What he says, has a lot of weight. And apart from these two, even the former Interior Minister of Pakistan, Rana Sanaullah, the other day said the situation in Balochistan is alarming. So all of them have been indicating, but you see, the state, the provincial government or the federal government has very little role to play in Balochistan. Balochistan is governed and has been governed since 1948 by the army. And the army, they have a command over there, and they have the entire intelligence paraphernalia, MI, ISI, IB. They must all be aware of the deteriorating situation. But, the point is that the army has thrown everything that they could against the Baloch for the last 70 years, including the most horrendous human rights violations. And yet, the Baloch will not relent. Because the Baloch are ideologically committed. They did not agree or did not accept the accession of the princely state of Kalat to Pakistan. The problem starts from 1948. It was forcibly annexed. Despite Muhammad Ali Jinnah being the lawyer for the Khan of Kalat, being a personal friend of his, when it came to the crunch, he sent in the army and the Khan was picked up, brought to Karachi and made to sign the instrument of accession. So the Baloch have not forgotten that. And since then, there have been a series of injustices meted out to the Baloch, and which they all resent. So this is all accumulated. And I think the straw which broke the camel's back is this issue of missing persons. Young boys who are picked up, whose bodies are, tortured bodies are found. Many times the bodies are also not found. So this term has cropped up in Balochistan called half widows. Where women don't know whether they are married or they are widows. So can you imagine the agony of a lady whose husband has been missing for 15 years, somebody whose father has been missing or his brother has been missing? And that's the reason you will find that the civil society movement in Balochistan has come out into its own with women at the forefront, because they're all protesting against the menfolk who are missing, and they are being led by this firebrand doctor, Mehrang Baloch, who has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. So coming back to your question about Balochistan breaking away, you see, all these politicians, what are they saying? That you have lost control. Now, how do you get back control? The Pakistan army only knows one way to get back control. The saying is, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That go in for it, military, all guns blazing. But that is not how Balochistan will be solved. No insurgency can be solved through F-16s and through military means. You have to have a political uh, dialogue. You have to have a talk to the people. Maybe in Balochistan it is too late for that. The time for talks was maybe
I was
20
I was
years
going to
ago.
ask you. I was going to ask you that is this moment. By the way, this standoff is not over. This hostage situation is not over. This train is still, the Pakistan army is using the phrase clearing operation. For those of us who have covered conflict, we know that this is a euphemism. This standoff is still on. The Baluchi militants have not given up control of the train. This is, of course, a representative image, but their statements are saying that they still have hostages of the Pakistan army in their control. My question, sir, and then I want to come to the China question, is do you believe this is a tipping point? And what does it mean for us in India? What is the impact of this crazy situation in Pakistan where the Pakistani military, let's make no bones about it, Pakistani journalists who live outside Pakistan, who are able to talk a little more bluntly. One of them was on my program yesterday saying this has been an absolute failure of the Pakistan army. This is a massive failure. And today it seems the Pakistan army is covering up for this failure in the only way it knows how, sending out people to try and point a finger across the border at us. This is a typical thing. Now, my question to you is this a tipping point?
See, I'm not sure about a tipping point because you know how insurgencies meander and go up and down and have the ups and
Yeah.
downs. But certainly it's a very, very important milestone. This milestone, I mean, will be referred to in future conversations and future historical development of Balochistan as something which the Baloch have managed to do, which has drawn the attention of everybody in Pakistan, everybody in Balochistan, everybody in Pakistan, and internationally. It is something, Balochistan is something which is sort of kept hidden, even though it's always Punjab, it's Pakistan, and every now and then Pakistan will produce a terrorist and hand it over to the US, and that catches headlines, and that becomes what Western media covers. But this is something that nobody in the West or internationally can ignore. The hijacking of a train, the
Yeah.
hijacking of 200 army soldiers. So this is certainly a very, very important development. Now, the Pakistan army certainly is taking a huge hit. As it is, it was taking a huge hit because of the terrorist incidents. In the last global terror index, which came out about a week ago,
Yeah.
which put Pakistan as number 2 in the list of countries affected by terrorism. In February, there were 121 fatalities, bulk of which were of Pak security forces, including the army. So people in Pakistan are asking, what is the army doing? That, if you are talking about canals building canals in Cholistan, you're talking about SIFC, the army chief is doing everything but his bread and butter, which should be the security and the protection of the lives of the people of Pakistan. So the
Yeah.
army is taking a huge hit. And I think
I-
we in
I-
India need to watch the situation. The one question that you asked, we need to watch the situation very carefully. Because, Barkha, frankly, what is holding Pakistan together is the Pakistan army. If the Pakistan army's integrity, chain of command, were to be damaged, were to be hit, were to break, then the bonds which hold the Federation of Pakistan together are really going to be loosened. So
yeah.
we in India need to be monitoring this very, very carefully and seeing how does the army react and what is the impact of this on the Pakistan army. That do they hold together? Will everybody agree to the sort of action that is going to be taken or is being taken right now? So that's very critical thing for India.
Now, may I ask you also, there are repercussions for China in the sense that China's big projects, have been attacked by the Baluchis. And in videos released earlier by the BLA, they have specifically said that this is a warning to both Pakistan and China. Chinese nationals have been killed earlier in a suicide bomb attack, the headline of which we're showing now. What does this do? Because China has said it's unacceptable, but as you said, the Baluch have not backed down. The Baluchis have not backed down. They have weaponized their movement. Parts of them have of their people have certainly weaponized their movement. What are the dimension? What are the repercussions for the big China infrastructure projects running through this region?
You see, if you take even for the last couple of years, CPEC has peaked. The Chinese are not doing any further investment. It was billed as a $62 billion project. I think the Chinese investment is not more than $22 billion. Last 3 or 4 years, nothing, no new funds have been coming to Pakistan. There's no further infusion. In addition to that, the Chinese are extremely upset about their personnel being targeted, which then impacts their projects. So they've been pressing down on Pakistan that you better get your act together. If you can't do it, we will send our security forces and they will provide security. Now, this is something which is going to be totally unacceptable to Pakistan, that, you hand over security of, let's say, Gwadar. And that there are Chinese, even if they are private security agencies, but
I was just going to ask you about the Gwadar port that is being developed by the Chinese. Now, if China says after this incident, which it is well in a position to, we don't trust the Pakistan military to be able to protect our infrastructure projects, our people, our interests. We want our security to be there. Now, that undercuts Pakistan's sovereignty, but it has repercussions for the entire region if that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Pakistan Army's reputation, which is already at a low ebb, will be in mud. That you can't protect. If you've got 2 special security divisions meant for this job, you can't protect the Chinese. And the Chinese have to send their own troops. This is something which will be totally unacceptable. But the Chinese, you're right, will press, especially if this hostage situation goes south and a lot of the soldiers get killed. You see, the Baloch have come, कहते हैं ना कि सर पे कफन बांधकर. So this is a suicidal mission. They know there is no escape. They won't get away from it. But what happens to the soldiers? They say that 30, maybe if there are 60 casualties or 90 casualties, it's really going to tell a lot. And the Chinese are going to say, look, we can't trust it. Either we pull out now or you let us put our own people. Because we have been saying for years, get your act together, get your act together. And you haven't been able to get your act together. Today a huge train has been hijacked. Tomorrow, what if the port is held hostage? The Gwadar port itself is held hostage, or a power plant where people are working, that is taken hostage. So it's going to have huge repercussions for the Pak-China relationship.
Yeah. So you actually think it's not implausible, depending on how this hostage situation ends, for the Chinese to say, we want to put our own troops on the ground?
Absolutely. They already have talked about it. They've already talked. And you see, also it's financial. Every 6 months, Pakistan goes running to China to roll over the loans that they have given, the safe deposits which they have kept at the State Bank of Pakistan. 3 days ago, I think they rolled over $2 billion. After a while, Pakistan will say, sorry. Or we will do it if you hand over Gwadar to us, like they've done with Hambantota. Sri Lanka has handed over Hambantota for a 99-year lease. What if they say the same thing to Pakistan? Pakistan will be in no position to say no. Then they will say, for the protection of Gwadar, we need to have our own troops.
Yeah.
Will Pakistan be in a position to resist?
Yeah.
I don't think so. So it'll really be a very, very adverse situation for Pakistan were that stage to come.
Yeah. Let's talk about one other dimension that we haven't spoken about, the Taliban. Afghanistan's Taliban regime, or sections of the Taliban, is now, according to some reports, backing the Baloch insurgents. Do you agree with that? Do you think that is a nexus that has emerged as well?
I can't be sure about the Taliban, Afghan Taliban, but certainly the Baloch have got a tie-up with the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which are the Pakistani Taliban. And the Pakistani Taliban, in turn, have a very strong relationship with the Afghan Taliban. So, indirectly, you can say there is a connection. But now, for example, the weaponry which the Baloch have got, this is American weaponry, which they have come to them through the TTP. And the TTP, in turn, has got it from the Afghan Taliban. So there is some sort of a nexus, but if there's a direct relationship between the Taliban and the Baloch, I'm not sure.
But, I think the question now is what next? I think you have flagged the fact that Pakistan Army's reputation hinges on this. The future of Chinese projects hinges on this. And therefore, the economic sort of future of Pakistan is linked to these Chinese projects. Pakistan's sovereignty, already seen as a vassal state of China, hinges on what happens next, because China could say, we want to put our own troops, as you said. What now? If the Pakistan army is weakened, firstly, who's going to tell the story? Because the Pakistan media, and I know this from friends in the Pakistan media, is not being allowed to tell this story openly. Who's going to tell this story?
So, the Baloch have a media network. It is not as sophisticated as what the TTP has. The TTP has a very, very sophisticated media network. But the Baloch are putting out information on a regular basis. They're putting out tweets in which they're putting out their statements. They will have to tell the narrative. In fact, at some stage, it's going to become a war of narratives. The international opinion is very going to go rally behind Pakistan, saying that any hostage-taking situation is unacceptable. They don't know what the ground situation in Balochistan is. The Baloch will have to counter that with their own narrative, that why are they doing it and what are the kind of injustices and brutalities they have faced for the last 70 years, including the case of missing persons and the torture of their youth. So it's going to become a war of narratives. The Baloch will have to step up to the plate and provide the narrative which the world can then, or the media can then run with. If they don't do that, then the Pakistani media and the paid Pakistani journalists, as it is, you see, the Pakistan Army narrative has come that they are the ones who rescued the civilians, the women and children. The real fact is that they have some of the people who were released have been interviewed, who have said that no, they were released by the Baloch.
I have this clip. I want to play it for you because this is a very important point. One of the passengers actually says कि हमें छोड़ दिया. Could we please play out that little clip of the passenger, of the released passenger?
सर हम लोग को छोड़ दिया, फिर बोला आप लोग जाएं भाई, अपना रास्ता पकड़ निकलते जाएं, आप लोग के साथ दुश्मनी नहीं है. हम लोग पैदल निकलते नीचे नहर में गिर गए. शहर में डाला आपको, निकलते गए, पानी पत्थर पानी. 4 घंटे हम लोग लगाया पानी से.
वहाँ पे खवातीन और बच्चे भी जख्मी हुए हैं. अच्छा सर, वहाँ से जब आप बल्ली पहुंचे, वहाँ पे एफसी वालों ने आपकी कितनी खिदमत की, किस तरह लेके आए?
वहाँ पर हम लोग की खिदमत तो कोई नहीं.
So he's asked आपकी कितनी खिदमत हुई? He said खिदमत तो कोई नहीं हुई, and he says हमें छोड़ दिया गया और हमें 4 घंटा लगा to reach wherever he reached. And then he's asked कि जब आप वहाँ पहुंचे तो आपकी कितनी खिदमत हुई? He says कोई नहीं खिदमत हुई. Now this is very important because yesterday when I was reporting this story, our sources and our friends in the Pakistani media who live outside Pakistan who were reporting this story, they said that those who were from Balochistan, people of Balochistan, were released. Women and children were released. And security personnel were the ones who were held back.
Yeah, that's true. You see, and also if you look at the Baloch culture, and if you've studied Baloch insurgency for the last 70 years, the Baloch will never target women and children. The women have a very important position in Baloch Mayar, the Baloch code. They will never harm or hurt a woman, and there was no way. So, a lot of these Pak journalists are saying they were made women and children hostages and they were using them as protective shields. All nonsense. The Baloch will never do that. And I'm not surprised at all that they released them straight away.
Yeah, and so now the point is that on the one hand, you have Trump standing up in the US Congress saying, thank you, Asim Munir, for handing us over this terrorist who was responsible for the deaths of US servicemen in Kabul. But on the other hand, you have the world watching this. Now, my concern as an Indian is Pakistan could use this to say, see, we are victims. We are victims of the TTP. We are victims of the BLA, right? We are victims of terrorism. We're not the patrons of terrorism, which is how we in India see the Pakistani deep state. We are the victims. India will have to find in this global war of narratives a way to remind the world of what we have gone through for decades altogether, sir.
Absolutely. No, no, and you see, one is that immediate narrative which the Baloch will have to push. We will have to also push the narrative about what Pakistan state really is, what it has been doing, and also press this point that just like what Musharraf used to do, the present government is doing the same thing. That whenever the IMF delegation was in Pakistan, so you produce this one guy just before President Trump was to make his union address, and a lot of kudos Pakistan got. Apparently, they have arrested even many more ISKP people who will be released. You'll notice it in the next 2 to 3 months. One by one, several others will also come out. So the war of narratives is going to be extremely important. And I think, people who are sympathetic to the Baloch should also chip in and push the narrative about the actual reality of what the Pakistan army has been doing in Balochistan.
Yeah. Finally, as we wait for more details, more sort of tactile details to emerge from this train hijack situation, what are the couple of things you'd be looking out for in the next couple of months? I mean, I think you've already flagged the most important one. Will the Chinese ask to put their own troops? Will the Chinese pull back from some of these projects? Imagine if Gwadar was taken hostage in the way that this train has. But what would you be looking out to see? Because there's been a lot of I would say a lot of churn within the Pakistan military. In some ways, the battle with Imran Khan reflected a kind of factionalism within the Pakistani security establishment. He's in jail. It's very interesting to see supporters of Imran Khan today actually retweeting, reposting the statement by Akhtar Mengel, really lashing out at the Pakistani state and the Pakistan army. So what would you be looking out for in the next few months?
You see, a couple of things. If the Pakistan army takes the right kind of lesson from this incident and the statements that the Pakistani leaders have been making, I'd be interested to see if they open back channel negotiations with the leadership of the Baloch, which is sitting abroad, especially in London. That will be one that they have learnt. They have learnt the lesson. They're willing to now look at a political compromise. Does that happen? Second, what impact does it have on the tactics of the Pakistan army in Balochistan and in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa? Do they realize how close they are to the brink? How close they are that the federation is going to, the chains holding the federation are going to loosen irreparably. Do they do that? So I think around these kind of things, one should look at very, very closely.
And to that last point, what is your own sense? I agree with you that insurgencies are meandering just when you think, a country is going to balkanize, back channel talks are opened, and that could well happen. The Pakistan military may have no option at this moment but to do that once the dust has settled on this hostage situation. But when you say the chains holding Pakistan together could actually break or loosen, what does a balkanized Pakistan mean for India? I mean, there are two views on this. A weakened Pakistan, a Pakistan in turmoil is better news for India, considering Pakistan's an adversarial nation. The other view is a Pakistan in turmoil with all of these, freelance terrorists backed by the deep state, and you don't have centralized command anymore, is even more dangerous for India. Which one do you think it is?
You see, there are pros and cons on both sides. It's a gray matter, it's works both ways. But I would say that a weakened Pakistan, see, the point is Pakistan's DNA. A strong Pakistan with the same DNA is a threat to India. A weak Pakistan with the same DNA is less of a threat. Yes, there is danger of people coming into India, ideas infiltrating, all those kinds of things are there. Those are security issues that can be managed. But a strong Pakistan with an anti-India, hatred for the Hindu, hatred for India DNA is a far bigger threat and danger to India than a weakened Pakistan.
And hatred also for India's diversity, because this idea that India was for Hindus and Pakistan was for Muslims has already been challenged by the birth of Bangladesh.
Yeah, exactly. So they can't, every time there is something happens, after all, we are a nation of over 1 billion, there are bound to be problems, there are bound to be frictions. The way they go to town over it. They can't, we were right, Jinnah was right, we came over, all that kind of nonsense that goes on. So for them, the minute they become stronger,
Yeah,
This is going to come back with a viciousness.
absolutely. And it's therefore a moment of high alert, you would say, for India and for India's strategic interests.
I think for the entire strategic community, all the journalists, people like you who've been watching Pakistan for decades, need to monitor this very, very, very closely. And don't take your eyes off it.
Absolutely. And thank you for helping us see the picture more clearly. Tilak, Devasher, I'm going to request you to pick up your book once more. We have a close-up of it here as well. I think if ever there was a moment that you wanted to understand Balochistan, there it is, Pakistan, the Balochistan Conundrum, written by Tilak Devasher, member of the NSAB and an absolute impeccable expert on all things Pakistan, in particular Balochistan, which is the subject of his most recent book. Thank you, sir. Learned a lot from you. Thank you, and we hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you, Namaskar.
Thank you, Barkha. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye, sir. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo's Story and support independent, robust journalism.